Lovely. Perfect, Brian. I'm just going to introduce you now. So welcome everybody, and thanks a million for taking the time to join us for today's Lunch and Learn. My name is Aoife Prendergast. I'm Careers and Employability Manager at AHECS Midwest here in Limerick, and I'm also on the AHECS Executive Board. So as AHECS, we're delighted to welcome back Brian Fahey from the Teaching Council for today's Lunch and Learn. The Teaching Council is the professional standards body for the teaching profession, which promotes and regulates professional standards in teaching, and it acts in the best interest of the public good while upholding and enhancing standards in the teaching profession. So we will have an informative session tailored to higher education careers officers today, and Brian will take the lead on that, and he will present some information to ourselves, and he will have some time for questions at the end. So I'll hand over to you, Brian, for the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Aoife, and thanks to everyone who's in attendance here, and to AHECS as well for inviting the council here to speak with you today. So I'll give a brief presentation, and then we might go into some Q&A afterwards, which might be more helpful for the members. So I'll just share my PowerPoint slide here. Aoife, you might be able to just let me know if you can see the slides.
Yeah, perfect here, Brian. Excellent.
Great, perfect. So as Aoife mentioned, Brian Fahey is my name. I'm working here in the Teaching Council in the communications section. I'm actually a primary school teacher and my school is in Limerick City, and I'm on a secondment to the council here. So I started working here in December 2018. And just to introduce a little bit about who the council are, I know Aoife mentioned it there, but to recap, yes, we're the regulatory body for the teaching profession in Ireland, and we would set and maintain the standards. So we would be responsibility for I suppose each step, as it says here, that a person goes through to become and remain a teacher. So what that means is we would advise the Minister for Education on what the standards and the entry requirements should be for programs of teacher education. We would review and we would accredit all of those programs of teacher education in the state. We would hold a register of teachers. There's nearly 120,000 teachers on the register, and you must be on that register in order to have your salary paid from the public funds as a teacher. We would investigate complaints against registered teachers, and we conduct research into the profession as well. So that's just a flavour of some of the work that we would do, and we're based here in Maynooth in County Kildare. Some people, I suppose, wonder where are we? So that's where we're based, and some of us are working with a hybrid working policy, like many organisations now. So some people working at home, some people working in the office, but a blend is where we work. In terms of the education system, you can see the sectors here in front of you: primary, post-primary, and further education, and that's what we regulate. There is the early years sector, there's lecturing, there's teaching English as a foreign language, but we don't regulate those sectors. So we only regulate the sectors you see on the screen there. And in terms of figures, there's more than 3,200 what we call recognised primary schools by the Department of Education, and over 700 post-primary schools with nearly 1 million students in the system. So as I mentioned earlier, where did the Teaching Council fit in? We set standards and we maintain those standards, and we ensure that all the teachers on the register of teachers have achieved minimum standards before they can be admitted to the register of teachers and recognised as what we call a Route 1 primary school teacher or a Route 2 post-primary school teacher, and so on. So we have the certain rules and regulations and standards that teachers or people must meet before they can be granted registration for those sectors. And if you're a teacher in Ireland, you must be registered with us in order to have your salary paid from the public funds. So that's important. And you can see the salary scale there on the right-hand side. So once you get a full-time job as a primary school teacher or a post-primary teacher, you start off in about 42,000 euros. So the pay and conditions, I suppose, is set by the Department of Education, and I've referenced them there at the bottom. And the details in relation to pay for teachers is laid out in Circular Letter 41 of 2023. And I know Aoife has a copy, or I think Caroline, sorry, has a copy of this PDF presentation. So maybe Caroline will be able to pop it into the chat box so people can review the slides as I'm going through them, and also click on the hyperlinks that are embedded behind each of these links, or each of these pieces of text. So it's important to be registered with the Teaching Council. So if any of your students in your colleges or universities want to become a teacher, it's important that the pathway they choose will lead to registration with the Teaching Council so that their salary can be paid from public funds. And I suppose just as a kind of a side note, if a teacher is registered as a primary school teacher with the Teaching Council, they'll get the full qualified rate of pay in primary schools when they work in that primary school sector. But if they work in another sector like post-primary or in the further education sector, they'll get the unqualified rate of pay. And same is if you're a post-primary registered teacher, you'll get the unqualified rate of pay if you're not working in that sector, if you decide to work in a primary school, for example. And later on, I'll speak about further education as well. If you're a further education registered teacher, you'll only get the qualified rate of pay if you're working in the further education sector. But a lot of people will use their registration to work in the other sectors, such as primary or post-primary, but they will get the unqualified rate of pay. And that's a rule from the Department of Education. So here are three leaflets that we have, or I suppose they're 4-page leaflets that are helpful, and these are available on our website. And I can also post some out to the AHECS members if you wish to have some hard copies. So we have primary and post-primary leaflets. The further education one is in draft format at the moment. It's being developed. So do click on those, and it brings you to a web page. So it doesn't bring you to the PDF online. The Teaching Council, we've developed a new website, and we're striving to ensure that every piece of it is accessible to screen readers and to those who may be have a visual impairment. So we've made these into HTML pages, so you won't get the PDF online, but you will get, I suppose, a web page version of the booklet. And as I said, I can post some out to you if you wish. So I'll focus mainly on primary and post-primary. So these are the accredited providers of what we call initial teacher education in the state. For primary, you see there are 5, and there's quite a few for post-primary. But just to note, for post-primary, they don't all qualify you to teach all the different subjects. So some of them maybe would be more specialized for certain subject areas. So, but that's, I suppose, a list of them all on screen there. And just how do you become a primary and post-primary teacher? For AHECS members here today, the students that would be, I suppose, you'll be speaking with, they're mostly interested in what we call here option 2, as you can see on your screen. It's where they're on a level 8 undergraduate degree in your college or university, and they want to follow that then with a PME, a Professional Master of Education degree. So that's a 2-year teacher education qualification, and it's when they complete that, then they're a qualified teacher. Now, you can do the PME primary to become a primary school teacher, or a PME post-primary, which is aimed at the 12 to 18-year-olds, and then you're a post-primary teacher. But there are different entry requirements for each. So any queries regarding entry requirements or fees or the timelines or the process or how do I get onto that course, they're best addressed by those individual colleges or universities, because they're the ones that would be, I suppose, they're autonomous and they decide who gets into their college. Now, the Teaching Council, we would register that person then as a teacher, that student as a teacher, once they complete the PME. But all queries around entry are best, I suppose, made to the different colleges and the universities. So just go back a little bit here. So here are the different colleges and universities. Sometimes students make the mistake of thinking that it's the same deadline, closing date for applications for the different colleges and universities, or the fees are the same, or maybe the grading criteria on, for example, Maynooth University might decide this is how we're going to assess our PME applicants, whereas University College Cork might have a different method of assessing their PME applicants. So it's important that your students, if they're thinking of becoming a teacher, then they check in with each of the university's websites to see what is the process and what are the requirements, because they can vary across the providers. But some helpful information is available here in this booklet from the Department of Education. So this is for the For anybody interested in becoming a primary school teacher, any of your students who want to do the PME primary, there's a guide from the Department of Education here. Now, this guide is out of date at the moment. It was published earlier this year, and it was for the previous PME applications, for last year, we'll say. But this document is compiled each year by the Department of Education. So it should be released again in maybe early 2024. And it's a helpful guide as to how do you apply for the PME primary. And it gives the entry requirements, the minimum entry requirements, and it also has the alternatives to the second level qualification required in English, Irish, and maths. So just as a bit of background, to be entry requirements to the PME primary usually require that the student has a level 8 degree, but also has a H4 in Gaeilge from their Leaving Cert and a H7 or an O4 in English and maths. But there's also alternatives to those if you wish. So you might have a student in your college who hasn't done the Irish Leaving Certificate. So they may have another qualification that can be used in lieu of that. So this document will provide those details. Or alternatively, as I mentioned, your student could link directly in with the college or the university that's going to receive their application. For post-primary, this is the main document. It's the curricular subject requirements, and it sets out what the student should have covered on their level 8 in Dundalk IT before they go on and do the professional masters of education to become a business teacher, we'll say. So it tells you how much credits or how many credits and what essential areas the student must have covered in their level 8 undergraduate degree prior to entering the professional master of education to become a post-primary teacher of, as I said there, maybe business or maths or whatever. So the document lists all of the different subjects that you can become a registered teacher of. So this only relates to post-primary, and the student must meet the requirements for one subject, and then they can get on to the PME to become a teacher of that subject. Now, they can do additional study later on, maybe a master's or a postgraduate diploma, and meet the requirements for a second subject or a third subject, and they can add those to their registration later on. They don't need to redo their PME. They don't need to do another professional master of education degree. So they can add additional subjects to your registration later on. Or if there's shortfalls, if you're short a few credits, you can do a top-up module and address that shortfall. So this is an important document. If any of your students are in first year or second year and they're thinking about becoming a teacher, they should check to see, are they doing enough modules in, we'll say, maths? Are they doing statistics or algebra or analysis? Are they doing geometry? So if they're not doing geometry, well, then they need to take a module. If they had an elective opportunity in second year or third year, they should check to see, do they need to elect to take a certain module such that they now meet the requirements for the teaching of that subject. And then to get onto the PME, they would need to, as I said, have met the requirements for one subject. So it's important to bring this to their attention, I suppose, as early as possible. So just an example here, this is just a screenshot from business. It shows that the student would need to have a level 8 degree on the National Framework of Qualifications. They would need to have a degree which is 180 ECTS credits. And then of that degree, they'd need to study business up to and including third year level. So they can't take business at first year and second year level and then drop it. They need to take at least some of the study at third year level. In total, they need to have 60 ECTS credits of business, and they need to cover at least 5 of the essential areas. So you can see from the screenshot there, there's a number of them: organizational behavior, management, marketing, business law, any 5 of those. So there's no requirement to have an even split amongst the 5, 12 credits each. You don't need, we haven't specified that. So a student could take, 10 credits of management, only 5 credits marketing, and the rest spread among the other modules. So it's fairly broad and accessible. And if the student knows about this at the earliest opportunity, it would be better for them. So this is for post-primary students. Just a signpost, if you look at if any student wants to become a teacher of a language, and here are the 12 languages that you can be a registered teacher of. there's one of the requirements is that they have had an immersive educational experience, that they've spent 4 weeks in a place where the language is the vernacular, where they speak that language. So we've provided some guidance on our website on what that immersive educational experience is or is not. So we've examples on our website which might be helpful for the student if they're wondering, have they met the immersive educational experience requirement? That's only for now for post-primary or for those who want to do the professional Master of Education post-primary in a language. Another website then is gov.ie/teaching transforms. It's a nice website to direct students to, if they're unsure, there's promotional content there which will help them. It's very motivating. If they're not fully sure if they want to be a teacher yet, if they're still exploring, this is a helpful website, and it goes through a lot of information, and it provides info on financial supports and also on AHECS courses. So if your student is from a group which is underrepresented in teaching, so if the student has a disability, if the student is from the traveller community, from an area that's socioeconomically disadvantaged, maybe from the migrant community, then they may be eligible for an AHECS course. So do point that out to them, and then they may be able to get direct entry onto a program of teacher education. So do check out that website, or if your students, if you think they might benefit from that, it would be good to bring that to their attention as well. And then, particularly for people near the border, can you qualify outside of Ireland as a teacher and then come back? The answer is yes, but there's a few things to note. So we would assess all qualifications from outside of Ireland in line with what we call the EU directive on the recognition of professional qualifications, and it's 2005/36/EC. And if your student wants to become a teacher in Northern Ireland or England or Scotland or America or Australia, that's fine. They need to become a fully qualified teacher in that country. They can't come back unless they have a statement or evidence or letter from the competent authority that states they're a fully qualified teacher. So what that means in different countries is different. So in, for example, Northern Ireland at the moment, the General Teaching Council of Northern Ireland may grant you full registration as a teacher up there, having just completed your teacher education qualification. Whereas in England, you may be required to do your teacher education qualification plus a period of induction and the induction is 2 years. You have to work in a school for 2 years, and then that you'll be the TRA in England will certify that, and then that certification plus your teacher education qualification gives you your fully qualified status. So you would need to check what does fully qualified mean for America or the state of California, in Queensland and in Australia. What does fully qualified mean for the competent authority in that jurisdiction? And an example is Ireland, for example. If you complete a 4-year Bachelor of Education degree to become a primary school teacher in Ireland, or if you complete a post-primary teacher education qualification, you're not deemed fully qualified by ourselves, the Teaching Council, until you complete what we call the DRIHID program. And that's your period of induction after you qualify. So in Ireland, you would need to have your teacher education qualification plus your induction. And that is the case in many countries. So it's important that your students are aware that they would need to become fully qualified prior to returning to Ireland, and they would need to be able to evidence that by the competent authority. And we have a list of who these competent authorities are on our website, and the countries are there, and you can expand the accordion on our website there, and you can see the details of the competent authority in the different jurisdictions in Australia and England and so on. Now, when we do assess the qualification of the student, when they return from that other country, it's likely that they will have shortfalls. So that's where we'll have assessed their qualification, and we would have compared it to the minimum standards achieved by the graduates in Ireland, and they may not have covered the teaching of Gaeilge to the children aged 4 to 12. That's if they're a primary school teacher. So we'd have the Irish language requirement applied on their registration as a condition, and we'd be asking them that they would complete or address that condition within 3 years. So they'd have to go to Marino Institute of Education and have that addressed, and that would there would be a cost to that. There would be time. There would be examinations. So they would have 3 years to address the condition. For post-primary students, or for post-primary fully qualified teachers returning, they may not have covered the history and the structure of the Irish education system. So similarly, we would give them 3 years to address that condition. And that could be done through an online exam that they can take, which is free of charge. And they'd have to do some self-study. Now, there's alternative ways to address conditions that we might apply on the teacher's registration. But it's important to note that they would have to eventually address these conditions, or they'd be removed from the register of teachers. But the good news is that they wouldn't, they'll be able to work and get a full qualified rate of pay if they're teaching in the appropriate sector. And they'd also be able to work, I suppose, the same as their counterparts, but they would have conditions on their registration. And I'm just trying to think, where might it disadvantage them, if any? At interview stage, your certificate of registration is generally looked for by the Board of Management or the Management Authority of the school, and it would be noted there. So it would be, I suppose, something that the employer, the school, may take notice of, and they may, they may or they may not look at that as a negative, depending on the school and what they're looking for. So, for example, the Irish language requirement, if you were teaching in a primary school, the employer might look at that you may not be competent to teach the Irish language to the students, and the students in the primary school are obliged to be taught that. So that's something that might be considered there. But it's employment is a matter for each of the schools. So what the Teaching Council would do is we will just assess the qualifications against the minimum standards achieved by the graduates in Ireland, apply conditions where we see fit, and then the teacher would have to address those shortfalls within 3 years. But a school, the management in the school decide best, they're best placed, and they decide on the employment of the teacher. So just to note that the post-primary teachers, we'd assess their qualifications against the curricular subject requirements for the subject that they want to become a teacher of. And I have a link there to the maybe other registration conditions that might be applied. Just for employment then, here are some links. So for any of your students who definitely know they want to be a teacher, maybe they're well along the way of researching the professional master of education, and they're just interested in where will I get a job, or they're looking into that side of things. Here are links to the most common areas that provide jobs, and you can see educationpost.ie is mentioned twice here. So I'll just bring you through some screenshots of that, and that would be a main website, not the only website. And educationpost.ie, you can see that you can search by level. You can select the level, whether it's primary, post-primary, or further education. And there's also an other and an international section. You can go to county, and you can select by category. So this is a website from the Irish Primary Principals Network, and it's very helpful. And you can see here, this is just a screenshot of some accounting and business positions that are available in Ireland as of, I think, Monday morning. I checked this on Monday morning, and we're now at a time of the year where most posts would be filled. So if you check this in April or May, there would definitely be more posts available. There's also a sub-seeker section to the platform whereby you can upload your profile and indicate if you're available for work on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and you're not available on a Thursday or Friday, for example. So you can indicate your availability and also the counties that you're available to work in, and then the school will contact you then if there's work available and they wish to employ you. So your students might wish to upload their profile on this, but you would need to be a registered teacher. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people would use their further education registration to um, I suppose, access this portal. And any student who has a level 8 degree is eligible for further education registration with the Teaching Council. So once you have your level 8 degree, you can apply for further education registration, and that will give you a Teaching Council number. And then you can carry out some substitution work at primary and post-primary, which is what many people do. Given there's a shortage at the moment of teachers, in particular in cities, and that then will allow the student to earn a salary, albeit at the unqualified rate of pay, but it's something that the student may wish to consider. But they would need a level 8 degree, so they would either need to graduate from their course, or if they're on a postgraduate program, if they're on a master's degree at the moment, well then they already most likely have a level 8 degree. So some of your students may be eligible for further education registration today, so then they could access this platform and they could seek some substitution work. In terms of teacher supply, so it's a national and international challenge. It was in the news recently this week. At post-primary, the subjects anecdotally that we hear are in demand are the science subjects, so biology, chemistry, physics, and so on, maths, the modern foreign languages, Gaeilge, and home economics. But it's generally the cities and the Greater Dublin area. So you have Cork, Dublin, Galway, Kildare, Limerick, and Meath. That's where the main demand is at the moment. That I could see yesterday on educationpost.ie, where there were still outstanding jobs, where most of them were. But it's not to say that if your students are interested in becoming an economics teacher that they won't get a job. Uh, it's completely up to, I suppose, the mobility of that student after they qualify, whether they move to a city or not, whether they want to stay in a certain area. And there's many more things that a school might consider in the employment of a teacher, aside from just, are you a registered teacher of that subject? Because a school is much more than just teaching subjects. There's a whole human and a social element, and what else can you bring to the school? So there's many, I suppose, things that come into the question of, will I get a job when I qualify? But that's a snapshot of where the demand seems to lie at the moment. So I might finish there, and I can take maybe questions through the chat, Caroline or Aoife, and that might be more helpful for the attendees. So thanks very much for persevering through that. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Brian. That was really informative. Thanks so much. I'll just have a look at the questions now that might have came up during the talk there. And I know a question there from Angela. Can an undergraduate student work as a sub after third year while still undergoing their level 8?
No. So to register as a further education teacher, which would be the pathway that that student would be looking at, you would need to have a level 8 degree. So they don't have the level 8 degree yet. So that would be a no. Now, another option is that they have a level 7 degree, but they have significant experience in that area in which they've worked in the area that they studied. So you have people with level 7 degrees that have at least maybe 3 years experience working in that area, so they may be eligible. So unless the student could fulfill um, that that piece. Now we have what we call our registration regulations handbook, and I can pop that in to the chat. Maybe I'll just get that now if that's okay. Registration and that might be helpful.
Sure.
Just have it in one moment. Don't seem to have the link. What I'll do is I'll actually pop back into this Microsoft Teams call after the call.
Perfect.
And I'll paste the link. So everybody should get a notification then of the link to the registration regulations handbook. And what that outlines, it's I suppose quite technical. It's the specific rules around what you need to meet to get registration under what we call Route 1 primary or Route 3 further education, as the question related to there.
Okay, lovely. And I know another question has came up in terms of students are asking how likely is the PME to be reduced from 2 years to 1?
I don't know. Wouldn't be my area. I'd have to refer that to my colleagues in initial teacher education. I know that it has been in the media. The Tánaiste mentioned it. People call for it. There's also the other side of, having a comprehensive and a very high quality teacher education program, which then eventually will lead to, high quality teaching and, the betterment for the students. But I don't know. I'm not privy to anything in relation to that. So
No
apologies, I
updates on
can't
that.
give no
Yeah,
updates on
yeah.
that. Sorry.
And I think the other question there was, is it 1 year in the north of Ireland?
So as far as I'm aware, in the north of Ireland, you can complete a PGCE, a postgraduate certificate in education, that's accredited by the General Teaching Council of Northern Ireland. And once you complete that and satisfy the General Teaching Council of Northern Ireland's requirements, um, then that's you as a qualified teacher in the north of Ireland. Yes. Now, I suppose where we could only really answer questions in relation to Ireland. So, questions in relation to other jurisdictions, you'd probably have to check with the competent authority in that jurisdiction. But as far as I'm aware, in Northern Ireland, you can complete a 1 year postgraduate certificate in education in, for example, Queen's University Belfast or Ulster University. They have a campus in both Belfast and Coleraine. I think all of their teacher education programs are in Coleraine actually for Ulster University. So
Mm.
yes, but to be sure, and it would be best if your students are ever or anyone's ever wondering about the north of Ireland to check in with the General Teaching Council of Northern Ireland, because if the rules changed overnight, we
Mm.
wouldn't be aware of that. So best to go to the competent authority in each country to get the best information.
Okay, perfect. And another question there as well, Brian, how many conditions are being placed on Irish graduates who train in England and want to register in Ireland?
So that completely depends upon the course. So there's lots and lots and lots of different ways you can be granted qualified teacher status in England. And some people might be given just, uh, if it's a primary school teacher, maybe just the Irish language requirement, or if it's a post-primary teacher, just the history and the structure of the Irish education system. Um, if the teacher didn't cover the philosophy of education, the psychology of education, the history of education, the sociology of education, then all those will be applied as well. So there's a variety of different courses available um, in different countries. So, for example, some people might not complete a teacher education qualification at all, and they might
Mm.
somehow achieve qualified teacher status. So they would suffer, I suppose, significant shortfalls in their registration. So what you're looking for is those foundational studies: psychology of education, philosophy of education, sociology of education, history of education. Did the student, or is the course I'm going to do, does it contain those? Am I out on student placement? For how long? Am I being mentored? Am I being coached? Um, do I have the opportunity to work in the school? So there's no set answer. Everyone's application is assessed holistically when they come in. So we would look at their experience, we would look at the qualifications that they have, maybe from Ireland and also from England, or maybe from somewhere else, and also anything else that they feel is relevant. And that would be their application. So no two applications would be the same. A core part of people's application would be their teacher education qualification, but there might be other things that would compensate if there was a need for that. So I can't, I suppose, definitively answer that, but it can certainly vary from one to many.
Okay, okay. Um, and I have another question there. Is sports science considered a subject for post-primary teaching?
No, that'd be physical education, I suppose, or biology would be your closest aligned subjects there. But again, you'd have to look at the curricular subject requirements, that document, and check to see what subject area best aligns with the course, or vice versa. And you might have 40 credits of PE or
Mm.
50, but you can always re-enroll or enroll on another module privately with the college, or any college. It could be online. It doesn't have to be another full degree. It doesn't have to be a postgraduate diploma. It doesn't have to be a master's degree. Once you're accredited with that 5 credit module or that 10 credit module that you're short, then that's sufficient. So if you do a self-assessment, I suppose if the student does a self-assessment, or if any of you wish, you could look at different programs in your colleges and universities and see where what courses align to different subject areas. The Teaching Council, we don't provide any pre-assessment service because there's hundreds and hundreds of courses and they could change with programmatical review. So we once had this list of auto qualifications so that once you completed a degree, it allowed you to register as a geography and history teacher. But over time, the course might change and so on. So what we now have is the curricular subject requirements, which is available, and you just have to check that your course meets that, or if it doesn't, identify the gap and then find maybe a college or university to allow you to address the gap.
Okay, brilliant. And I think that's what Orla had in her question there about advising students to analyse the Irish PME curriculum and choose a course accordingly. Great. Good stuff. Is there
Yes.
any other further questions? I wonder. See now is okay, yeah. For post-primary teachers with one subject, first of all, can they find work and also teach non-examinable subjects to make a decent living?
So yes, they can teach. Once you're a registered post-primary teacher, you can actually teach any subject at post-primary level if the principal teacher wants you to. So an example would be you could be a fluent Spanish teacher and you're actually a registered maths teacher. But you might certainly, if you were brought into a school, you'd get maths classes, but you might get 5 hours of Spanish at first year, second year, maybe even a higher level. So you can definitely teach you can teach other subjects in the post-primary school without being a registered teacher of that subject. But that's up to the deployment of you as a teacher, and that will be decided by the principal teacher. So if I suppose what else you can bring to the school aside from your one registered subject. Whether or not you'll get a job, the cities, they're crying out for teachers in certain areas, other areas not so much. And also a school, as I said, is more than just teaching of academic subjects. Sport would be a huge thing in some schools. Music might be a big thing in other schools. It's what else you can bring to the school as well. But certainly, if you were a registered teacher of 2 subjects or 3 subjects, your scope for employment would be increased. And if you look on educationpost.ie and log in and click on some of the adverts, you can see the type of role that's available. It might be a combination of teaching business and accounting or business and economics. So if you were a registered teacher of 2 subjects, that would be better.
Lovely. And the second part to that question from Orla is there a fast track for getting a degree in the second subject?
So all you'd need to do is satisfy the curricular subject requirements for that second subject, which is 60 credits, 60 ECTS credits of the subject. So we'll say you want to add on geography to your teacher registration. You have to find a course that's at level 8 degree, level 8 on the National Framework of Qualifications. That's 60 credits of geography, and it covers human geography and physical geography. So that's the requirements. So once you meet the curricular subject requirements for that subject, you can add on that subject. You don't need to redo a PME or anything else, but it would just be good to bring the curricular subject requirements to the college or the university to say, does your course meet this? They may not tell you yes it does, but they might be helpful and they might point out, yeah, we can stand over that. We're covering these requirements. They're broad requirements in that they're not specifically granular. We don't require very nitty gritty pieces, so they're, I suppose, laid out to be as helpful as possible for students and for those adding on subjects.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very
Good
much.
stuff.
I asked loads of questions. You answered them all, Brian. Thank you so much. You're fantastic. Thank you very much, Aoife.
Lovely. Thanks a million,
Thanks,
Orla.
Orly. You're very welcome.
Lovely. I'll leave it open now just for another few questions if anyone has any final clarifications or questions they want to ask.
And just maybe while people are typing, that's an important piece that Orla had mentioned. Maybe people think that they have met the requirements for one subject and sure, I can't be a teacher of just one subject for my life. But there is the option of adding on subjects. So you can be a maths, if you've met the requirements for maths, or even if you're short, you address your gap, then you complete the PME to become a maths teacher. And then afterwards, you could work as a maths teacher for a year or two, and you could do some part-time study then, whilst getting, your next subject could be accounting or business. So then after a number of years, you're a registered teacher of 2 subjects. So you can kind of build your subjects in that sense. So it's not, some students think there's a misconception that you need to have it all set and ready now and then do your PME, and that's what you are for life. So there's no, that's not the case.
Brilliant stuff. Lots of valuable information there, Brian. Thank you so much. Okay.
You're very welcome.
Can I ask another question? Because I don't see anybody else. Is that okay?
That's fine, or to work away.
Brian, I'm kind of putting you maybe a little bit on the spot, but just socially, the issues that are rising in the classroom. What is happening from the teacher? Like, how are we addressing or supporting teachers to address what's arising in society and in the classroom?
Well, I suppose from a teaching council's perspective, it wouldn't be really our area, but I suppose I can speak from my own experience as a teacher. And yeah, look, depending on the school you're in, the issues or the challenges can vary. Whether you're in a DESH band 1 school, which would be a disadvantaged area, or a DESH band 2, or large urban school or a rural school, the challenges are different. So the local schools are, I know in my school, your colleagues and your management in your school are your first line of support, and they're the people around you. They're the people you'll go to. But certainly there's a variety of challenges. But from a teacher point of view, there is the employee assistance program that provided by the Department of Education. If teachers wanted to reach out to that, there's counselling available, there's supports there. But I suppose if there was any particular issue you had in mind, I might be aware of some other support for that. But in general, challenges vary. They can be great or small, and your colleagues and your management in your school are who I would go to if there was support needed. As I mentioned, when teachers qualify, there's the DRIHED program, which is the induction process, and there's a professional support team in each school, which is made of experienced teachers. They will support the newly qualified teacher in areas where they're struggling, or if they want further guidance. So there is that support there through the DRIHED program, the induction process. But I would always link in with colleagues, and then for teachers, there's the Spectrum Life or Employee Assistance Program, which is available if teachers wanted to call on that. But I suppose I haven't addressed any particular challenge there.
Yeah.
But as I said, that was more
brilliant.
so for there's the well-being team in there's well-being teams in the Department of Education. They have support services there. EDGE is the name of the support service, and there's OIDE, so edge.ie, and they would have supports and guidance and resources available through that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I have to go
You're
to
welcome.
class. I see there's another question, but really appreciate all the very valuable and practical and specific advice. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Orla.
Thanks, Orla. Lovely. And just that final question there, Brian, it's from Victoria. So if a student really, and I'm not sure will you be able to answer this, if a student really wants to be a teacher but is undecided between a teaching undergraduate degree and a normal undergraduate degree plus a master's, would there be a preferred route that schools might have a preference for in terms of employability?
I don't know, to be honest. The school would have to decide that because they're the employer. Each school will decide who they employ, so they might be looking for something different. But from a teaching council point of view, there's no difference. You have completed an accredited teacher education program, and you've met the standards to be admitted to the register of teachers as a primary school teacher or a post-primary teacher. So there is no financial difference because allowances are all removed at the moment for any post-2011 entrance to the teaching profession. So there's no financial incentive there. From the student's own point of view, they have a level 8 degree. They've spent 4 years in college. Now they're spending another 2. They're definitely going to be more mature, I suppose. So that's be their own choice in that, but it is certainly financially more expensive to complete 2 courses as opposed to 1, and it is increased time as well. So there's no advantage or disadvantage from a teaching council perspective, but from an employability perspective, schools would, I suppose, decide that themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think, yeah.
And I think there's just another one there. If you study to be a primary teacher and want to change to secondary, is that possible?
At the moment, you'd have to do another 2-year PME because it's aimed at the 12 to 18-year-old sector, and now the next one is aimed at the 4 to 12-year-old sector. So you can imagine teaching in senior infants is different to teaching 5th year maths. So it's the people in front of you. You will deduce, there'll be certainly a lot of crossover in terms of the foundational piece of psychology of education with, for example, philosophy of education. But, at the moment, there's no transition course, if that's kind of what's been looked at.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Brian. I don't think there's any other questions. I think we've been peppering you with lots of questions.
That's okay. And just to mention, there is a national engagement forum on teacher workforce planning and the shortage of teachers. So AHECS have been invited to it, and they've nominated, I think Gavin Connell is attending, and I think another member. So AHECS will be present at the National Engagement Forum on Teacher Workforce Planning, and that's taking place in Portlaoise in the Midlands Park Hotel on the 8th of December. So we have senior officials from the Department of Education will be there. Lots of the colleges and universities will be represented, the teacher unions. So it'll be a forum for discussion. So AHECS will be present at that alongside the Institute of Guidance Counsellors and the Adult Guidance Association. So just to flag that your organisation and your executive board will be at that.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it's great to have that representation, and thank you so much for all your time and your expertise today, Brian, especially for those answers to those questions as well. Thanks a million for the clarification. Really, really valuable. So we'll just finish up, I suppose, for today. And I know Caroline said she will be able to circulate the information afterwards. We'll get that out to members as well. But thank you so much for all your assistance and your insights. Very much appreciated. And thank you. Hope to see you again, Brian.
That's great. Thanks very much, Aoife, and thanks, Caroline, and to everyone as well.
Lovely.
Thanks, Brian.
to everyone for the attendance.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.